Fresh Perspectives is brought to you by Traverse City's Hang Workshop, offering social painting classes featuring step-by-step instruction for creating trendy home decor pieces. Sign up for a class online at hangworkshop.com. Welcome to Fresh Perspectives, where we talk with Northern Michigan residents who are looking at really familiar topics, but talking about them in a fresh, new way. Today, we're going to be talking about virtual reality. Now, when we think of virtual reality, gaming is the first that comes to mind. And Aaron Harris of the VR Guy does dabble in that. The custom realms that he's building, though, to benefit the community is bringing a fresh perspective on the possibilities of virtual reality. He's creating applications that can keep kids safer, future surgeons sharper, and give everyone access to adventure, proving that virtual reality is way more than just for games. Now, Aaron, before we dig a little deeper into the possibilities that we just discussed, can you kind of explain to us exactly what virtual reality is?
Yeah, okay, virtual reality is something that there's a lot of different ways you can kind of explain it. The simplest way I can think of is if you went to an IMAX theater and you've seen a 3D movie before, it's like a 3D movie, but you can actually walk around inside of it. So it's not just like one still image and you're just sitting there. You are actually a part of the experience with it. That's like the next like cutting edge technology that's coming out right now.
I love that it's no longer futuristic. Virtual reality it's happening now.
And it's affordable. I mean, it's something that you can go out and buy right now at the Microsoft store. So that's just how accessible it is. You know, this isn't something that's just for people with a lot of money. This is actually something, if you can buy a high-end surround sound system, you can get virtual reality right now.
That's crazy. How much does it cost?
Well, the devices themselves are actually, for the technology behind it, I think it's dirt cheap. It's on the lower end, it's like $400, $500. Again, we're talking about the ability for you to move around virtual reality. We're not talking about just like the phone. The phone, you put the phone inside little virtual reality and look around.
Sure.
That's like $50. You can sometimes get it for free.
Sure.
I'm talking about the stuff where you can actually move around. And that goes for, on the lower end, around $400, $500, and on the higher end, around $800. And that's not counting the machine to run it. You still need a machine to run it. And that can get a little bit more expensive, but the prices are going to come down real fast on that.
That's incredible. It's affordable, and it's this new technology it's quite incredible. I know I tried it out myself, and the experience was unlike anything I had ever encountered before. How would you describe what that realisticness is like? What is that experience like of stepping into a virtual reality realm?
Well, it's interesting because they're at first hesitant to try virtual reality, or they think I've already tried it before. And then it's the reason why, like, my first demo that I usually do is called The Blue by the company Weaver, WEVR. And I think it gets everything across about what virtual reality is. Because as soon as people see, in this demo, you're on the front of a battleship under the ocean. Now, the virtual reality headset already feels a little bit like a diving mask. So it all comes together, and you're on the bow of this like battleship under the ocean. And all of a sudden, this 100-foot blue whale comes out of nowhere, and it's only like 10 feet, 5 feet like right next to you. And everything comes together right there, because people usually move backwards. So it conveys the whole, I am in this world. The whale is enormous. So I mean, even though it looks a little bit like a Disney hologram, it looks like you've gone to Disney World, everything starts coming together, you feel it, you understand it. Most people's reactions are, wow. It's just that impactful on them.
It feels like you're almost deep sea diving in that specific demo.
Yeah, and like some people that have actually scuba dived before, they are very interested at first. It's like, oh, I can scuba dive, and then they try it, and they're like, this is like the real thing. This is what I've gone through swimming with whales or scuba diving with sea turtles. And so again, that one demo I loved because it conveys everything about it.
Sure. It's almost like it's beneficial for people who may be claustrophobic or they have health issues that they can't experience that in real life.
Yeah.
So they can experience that way. Or if perhaps they just can't travel to where the diving takes place, they're in a landlocked place and they can experience it.
And most of these demos that are made right now are made by small teams. It's just small groups of people making these. We haven't even had big money put into this yet. And it's things like, some people are afraid of heights. There's this guy, he's actually on YouTube. He's been doing VR for almost a year now. and he used to be afraid of heights. He had a 20-story building that he worked from. And he said because of the virtual reality, it's real. The heights are real in virtual reality. There's one demo where you walk a plank over some buildings. But he's done so much virtual reality, so much with heights. He actually showed himself hanging out his 20-story window at his office. He says, I used to have a bad fear of heights. And now it doesn't mean anything to me because I've gotten used to the idea that it's okay. You know, that there's that. You also have things like Alcoholics Anonymous. They've been working a little bit on this where they have their client, or they're not clients, but they have different group members. They have them practice being in a bar in virtual reality. They all have a drink together in a bar in virtual reality, so it's not real. But they said at first, all the members of the meeting, they're nervous, they're shaking, sort of, because they're in a bar and there's beer everywhere and it looks pretty real. You can actually reach out and grab it and stuff. But since it's not real, they kind of get used to it after 2 or 3 sessions of this. They get used to the idea that, like, I can do this. They've had some victories, you know, that they're put into a situation they couldn't possibly fail. They had some victories behind them, and they can actually go to a bar now with the meeting and not drink and feel good about it. So it does have a lot of power to do that.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Let's talk about some of the safety applications specifically for kids. What are some of those kind of softwares that you can design to help kids learn how to do something before they actually experience it?
I mean, there's a lot of things like to me for education, there's a lot of things that you're not able to teach easily at school, like practical life skills. One thing might be cooking. Okay, you know, if you want to solve the obesity epidemic, you know, for kids right now, to me, like teach them how to cook well, you know, and it's something in schools they can't afford the equipment, the ingredients, the safety of having like ovens running and things. So that's like a simple one that I think for kids. I mean, they have kind of a childish version of cooking right now already for VR, and kids love it. I'm like, okay, well, what if schools actually had some real cooking things? And you know, the ability for you'd have a timer inside of virtual reality, and you could be like cooking like a turkey or something,
sure,
and just accelerate the time on it. Say like, yeah, an hour's gone by, turkey's done, you know. But so kids could quickly get the experience of, let's say, cooking, or let's say working on a car. They could do something that's a practical life skill, which is, let's say, just refilling the oil or the transmission fluid, or changing. They could even change the oil on a Ford F-250 in virtual reality. Start the car, watch the pistons while they're moving, and drop away half of the car to where they're seeing now how everything works in unison. Everything works together with it. So in real life, this is a dangerous thing to have kids working around a car, or having it on a or on a lift, or whatever. But in virtual reality, you can make it all feels real. You get the muscle memory, so you can put kids in, you know, potentially what would have been dangerous situations, and they have hands-on ability now to think about how they worked under those conditions.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. I know earlier you were telling me a little bit about sailing applications too, which I thought was really important, especially for northern Michigan when we're surrounded by water.
Well, especially because it's things like, you know, virtual reality allows you to, I mean, it really feels like the holodeck in Star Trek. You're able to just jump into these different experiences. I never thought I'd be interested in rigging sails, but there's a guy right now, most of these things, again, are made by few people because big companies haven't been able to get in yet. And there's this guy, he's making a virtual reality simulation of rigging a boat, and everything's super accurate. He's getting the rope physics correct, he's getting all the sail correct, and it's mesmerizing to watch, and then actually playing it. I haven't actually been able to play it yet, but you know, from watching him play these different things and other similar demos that they've done for it, it's cathartic, I guess. You know, there's something about the experience of rigging the sails and properly sailing. It's just relaxing. And it's just like these kind of experiences or training, you know, like we could do things like here in Traverse City. We could have as homework assignments, people had to go home, had to actually do the rigging at home, they had to practice all the things, something that you can't easily set up at the school. You know, the problem is that you had to have the boats and not on the ocean, whatever.
Sure.
Now you can put them in adverse conditions, you can have them do all kinds of things in virtual reality and at least know the muscle memory, know what to do in an emergency situation. I had to do this or I had to do that, you know. So I think it's going to be able to accelerate learning quite a bit.
Especially with this technology being so mobile. You can take it and put it anywhere.
Yeah, we actually demonstrated that by bringing it here to the studio.
We sure did.
Yeah, it's like I'm getting better at it, and you know, I'm trying to get less and less cases for it. But yeah, it's something that I think a lot of people didn't really catch at first. A lot of people, they're like, well, problem is, you know, not everybody can afford the virtual reality. I've talked to schools, and they're definitely very interested, but they're still a little bit concerned about the cost of it right now because one is okay, but when you have to get 30 of them, it starts getting a little dicey. The big thing they hadn't really considered is just, like you say, how mobile it is. Like, I've gotten to the point now, making little upgrades and things. I mean, I love right now, and I'll bring it out right now, the virtual reality headset.
Perfect.
This is just the headpiece for the virtual reality unit. I've taken off the straps and the other cables. But it is extremely modular. You can do a lot with this. And so I've been able to make little upgrades to this. For example, this is other people online who came up with these ideas. but have wireless sensor towers. I've been able to add little upgrades here and there to make it more and more mobile. It's more and more formidable when I take it to rough conditions. I even had this outdoors. It was starting to sprinkle outside. I had this thing outdoors, and I was okay because I had everything pretty mobile. I could tear everything down real quick with it. So the ability for schools, not just they don't have to have a room with 30 virtual reality headsets. They can instead rotate 3 or 4 of them out to students, to their homes. And so it becomes a lot more feasible when you think of it in that way.
And it's simple enough for students to set up at home themselves, once they obviously are trained in how to do it.
Yes, it's to the point, I mean, like this guy right here, it's about, I'd say 3 steps for setting it up. So it's not terrible right now. There's some stuff on the software end that they're still correcting, sort of. Like sometimes you had to turn it off and restart it. Kind of like what computers used to do a lot before. It's kind of like that. You have to do a couple little things with it, but overall, I'd say it's easy enough that either the students themselves could do it and or just a brief troubleshoot guide, and they're good.
Okay. So you obviously can learn, educationally of different applications, and then there are also some activity applications too, like the bow and arrow one that we were able to experience here at the studio. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, there's quite a few. And all this stuff is experimental right now. It reminds me of the boom with Microsoft, before when you first had operating systems, Apple and Microsoft with it. So some of the stuff they're experimenting with, like right now, the bow and arrow, that's become very popular. Like most of the VR games they're making right now are usually something to do with bow and arrows because it's fun. It's a great experience. You're having fun. You're doing all the muscle movements of actually firing the bow and arrow.
Right.
They're saying it does all the upper torso movements that you do for a bow and arrow. Except for the pull of the string, but other than that, you're getting all the exercise for it. There's one in which you use the entire room and you're shooting these little holographic cubes, and every time you shoot them, they shoot back at you. So you're moving physically around the entire room. You get a workout, you're sweating. I mean, it's like, it's more fun than the gym, and at least you get some exercise, And so there's a lot of things that can be done for physical, experience and physical exercise that we just started with. There's another one, it's a boxing game. That's another one where people, you're able to actually box. One of the things you can actually box in this is a zombie. That's terrifying because you're boxing the zombie and he won't die. And he starts going for your neck and you're like, this is so wrong, he's too close. But it's a great experience, and again, you work up, your whole upper body gets worked out with it. And this is just the beginning. This is all like experiments by people, so. It's
incredible. Just what everyone's coming up with now, with the technology being so new, I can only imagine what it's going to be in only a few years' time.
Definitely. It's going to accelerate very quickly. It's something, I think it was one of their biggest mistakes that they went for when they've launched the virtual reality. Like the headset I got here, this guy came out a year ago. I was like first in line to pre-order it. This guy came out a year ago, and obviously like, oh, well, if this is so big, how come I haven't heard that much about it? Well, a lot of it is they're gearing it towards games and gamers at first. And I think it was totally the wrong direction. I think they know it too, because they're really starting to now push towards more enterprise, business-oriented things. China's building these, or buying these things up like crazy now, because businesses are very interested in this. And so I think it's taken a while for them to realize that I think education and medical and those things, that's really where this stuff is going to have a huge impact. They just didn't think about it. Right.
Let's talk more about the medical side of things. What are some applications that would be beneficial to educate our future surgeons?
Oh, well, I just talked to she was a nurse in training at Munson here. And she was talking about the biggest thing is the ability to simulate the actual work environment. Because she had actually tried the virtual reality headset, and she's like, straight up, we're talking to the professor, we're getting this as part of our curriculum. Because she's like, for me to have learned muscle movements, hand movements, simulating the actual rooms of Munson, she said to her, because she's like, when you go in there the first time and you're a new nurse, she says it's frightening and all that, and she's like, if we could have gotten acclimated to the environment beforehand, she says, it pretty much would help save lives, because we can actually feel comfortable in the work environment. My big thing that I would like to start doing too is having them train emergency situations that are often might come up, sort of, something like, and then have like disaster scenarios too. Oh no, the EKG meter's not working, what do you do? So this way because you can simulate so much, have them now, they have hands-on muscle memory of what they're doing with kind of like, okay, when this happens, I do this, I do this, and I do this. It's automatic. I think it saved lives, and it could actually accelerate learning for these different processes, so.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the biggest ones. The other one that's kind of, it's a little bit more simpler, but there's a doctor, he had actually taken the software, the virtual reality headset, and he took actual CAT scan readings and MRI readings, and he instead had it to where, instead of having like a flat, you normally have like the little cut, cross section of the MRI scan. He instead made it 3-dimensional, so he could zoom it in, he could blow it up, and he could just mark right where fractures are, real patient, all that. He just mark it in 3D, share it with colleagues, bada bing, bada boom, and he's like, that's something that we couldn't do before. I could just blow it up like that. So for radiologists and so many different people. I think there's so many avenues that can affect medical.
So forget about PowerPoint presentations,
Oh, yeah.
still images to display, okay, you need to cut here and insert this there. You can physically do it.
Well, even more important too, talk to some doctors about this, and that you're going to be able to, the doctors can walk a patient through the procedure and even have the patient perform the procedure, a simplified version of it, which they said one of the biggest things to have a patient do is to be relaxed and comfortable about the procedure. When they have to talk about it and describe it, your head fills all kinds of thoughts and what it is.
You hear a bunch of medical terminology that you're not familiar with.
And you're thinking, you can do what to me? And I said, when they actually can perform the procedure and see it, hands-on, oh, not a big deal, and they're like, that's big, because if they can get the patients to relax, that changes a lot for them, to get to where it's a relaxing experience. It's all bada bing, bada boom. It's just engineering,
Sure.
It's another one too, down the road. This is probably 5 years down the road.
Okay.
But with virtual reality, it's so precise with it. I can see us having something where a surgeon, a mediocre surgeon, apologize for that. A mediocre surgeon, he can have a needle that's 4 feet long or something, in virtual reality. He's now able to move that needle that's 4 feet long and move it, and a machine is doing it in tiny, tiny little movements down here. So it's recreating the movements that he's making in tiny little precise areas in a way that we've never been able to do before. We have some machines that can do an automated one, but this way he can by hand move the needle. And I think pretty much we've just shrunk the surgeon, and we just made it to where for him, the problem now is the size of a building. So it's like, it's a piece of cake for him to now navigate with that. So that's down the road, like 4 or 5 years, but I can definitely see that.
Okay. What do you see down the road in, say, 10 years?
Just a moment.
Sure.
Yeah, turn this off. Thank you. 10 years, I think it's going to be totally different. I don't even think we're going to have the headsets.
Okay.
I think that's just a short-term gap with it. I mean, that's like when you first try it, you're like, this is like Star Trek. This is like the holodeck. And so I think by having just the beginnings now, 10 years from now, I think we're going to move towards holograms. Instead of putting a headset on to see the blue whale, we're just going to project the blue whale for everybody to be able to see.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's, again, way down the road. But 10 years, a lot changes. 10 years ago, we didn't have iPhones. It was just kind of like the idea of the cell phones altogether to be used for anything was kind of like, what? So.
Right. It's crazy how technology has transformed in the last 10 and using virtual reality, what it could be like in the next 10.
Oh, yeah.
Quite incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we're just hitting the beginnings of it. So, I mean, I remember before with the iPhone, when that first came out, I was a little bit like, I don't see what's the big deal. I mean, I just people lining up for it. I mean, like now I feel like one of those iPhone guys where like, I'm the one lining up, like, yes, this is going to be big. And it wasn't until the iPhone 4 that like I really got it. I'm like this. At that point, everything had matured. The apps had matured. The way the phones had worked. All the phones are starting to become similar. That's when I got it, and that's when pretty much when you see every kind of senior citizen, it's like with a cell phone. And I think virtual reality it's going to take that equivalent to the iPhone 4. This stuff right now, this headset right now, this is like the first generation cell phones. It's big. It's bulky. It's kind of like one of those cell phones from Vietnam, call down artillery, it's a little big and a little bulky. 4 or 5 years down the road from now, though, I think is when it's going to just be a hit. And it's one other point here is that I do think that it's going to affect greatly, like we already have like all the different stores, brick and mortar stores that are kind of starting to close a little bit here because of Amazon. When people can shop through virtual reality, physically hold objects, I mean outside of the packaging, something you can't even do right now at a store, And when they can actually physically hold and see objects, clothes and all that, I would say brick and mortar is going to lose probably about 15% of their sale, and that we're talking about 5 to 10 years down the road. But again, we're talking about game changer for the world. The whole economics will change because of these devices. So a lot of things that'll happen.
A lot of things, absolutely. So say someone wants to experience virtual reality and they get a hold of you or they visit one of your demos that you do throughout Northern Michigan. What is the first thing that you have them do? Can you kind of walk them through the process?
Yeah, it's always pretty much, I've gone down to this order because I think it conveys everything about virtual reality. The first, like I said, is the Blue by Weaver, W-E-V-R. They have the big blue whale demo. That one just conveys everything. That gets everything that's virtual reality across right there. After that, I usually do Google Tilt Brush. That's a painting program. And that one's interesting because people have already seen that everything's 3D. They get that, and they start drawing. The first thing I'll have them do is draw their name. And then I'll usually, it depends on how old she is, I'll say, write your phone number. And that actually works. I got phone numbers that way. But then what they do is they end up, they draw in the same circle. They don't draw outside of that. They don't get that it's fully 3D. I usually have to tell them, and I learned this trick online before, make a door. No, make the door all the way to the ground. And they're like, oh, okay, I can do that. So they kind of bend down, they're like, oh, I can actually do that. Now make a door handle. Now walk through it. And suddenly their minds are blown. I'm like, they still hadn't gotten up to that point. Even with a whale and even with drawing, once they've walked through the door that they've created, they get it. I mean, I've had 4-year-olds that as soon as they understand that they can do that, they'll start making like portals and start like walking around their little rooms that they created. I'm like, they're 4 years old and they're grasping this concept now of I can draw in the air in 3D.
Wow.
So, and then the other part with the tilt brush is that I'll teach them how to be able to expand and shrink the environment. As soon as they figure out that, they now, everyone's minds are blown because they get the idea, I can become a giant or I can become an insect. It's just bending reality. You're like, oh wow, I can do all these things. And then the final demo I usually do is Google Earth. That's the one to kind of show, okay, here's now actual practical application. So Google Earth, it's the entirety of Earth, but you can just jump to anywhere. Like, I mean, you can jump from Berlin to LA, it's like, and all the buildings are proper scale, and I was able to learn the streets of Los Angeles. I've never been there before, but it's the point now I've got like actual like locational memory of kind of like, oh yeah, that's right over there, Beverly Hills are over there, I understand so much more what a Malibu mansion is, it's like, oh yeah, it's right down over there. Oh yeah, that's prime real estate, and it's something that I never got with books, movies, my geography was terrible before. I used to think San Francisco is only an hour away from Los Angeles. And Google Earth, because it's all real, you're actually in these locations. You can go up to a mountain and you can look across. Because it's so real, you're like, you get it. Like, oh, I totally get how far away that is. I totally get the architecture of these cities. San Francisco is very different from Tokyo, from, like I said, Berlin or, areas in Italy. And I mean, like, you just get how different the world is. It's just a mind-blowing experience, and it usually leads to some very interesting conversations because people will take me around the world and kind of explain areas they've been to and just kind of like, wow, this is like I'm actually there, and this is just the beginning. This is a free program, it's just started, so.
Right. So you can take your virtual reality software and hardware, and you can bring it into environments, say assisted living homes where the elderly, they don't leave very often, and you can bring the world to them. You can look at someone who hasn't left that building in weeks and say, where in the world do you want to go?
Yeah.
And you can take them there.
Oh yeah, I mean sometimes they'll be in tears for it because all these memories get conjured up, of these areas. I mean I had this kind of older guy, we spent like about, I'd say an hour and a half talking about Detroit. He would just take me from building to building and talk about, and he's just in virtual reality. He does, the virtual reality, if you've ever seen it, sometimes it can look a little ugly from the outside, and you're kind of like thinking like, oh, that looks stupid. Well, when you're in there, you really don't care. You're in a different world. And he spent an hour and a half just standing on top of buildings and talking about Detroit with it. And just great reminiscing and just be able to see the world, see areas of the world he hadn't been to in so long. And so like you say, for like a retirement home, I know that they did before, they did like the Wii bowling or whatever else, but it's like, I definitely think virtual reality, down the road, I think it's gonna be like the Matrix. In our time, as the younger generations here, it's going to be crazy to think what our retirement home is going to be like.
Sure.
It might literally be like getting lost in the Matrix, It's like for anybody who's actually seen that movie. I know there's a lot of young people who are like, what's the Matrix? And it's like, oh no. But yeah, it is amazing the experiences people can have with it. And like you said, especially with the elderly.
How impactful. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, there's also a woman, she's like 80 years old. I just met her a little bit ago. She had been a diver, swimmer, all these things all her life. Okay. And for her to go into the ocean once more, it was just for her, it was just like this amazing experience. So it was kind of like, again, that ability to be able to do that it's cool. It's life-changing,
Absolutely. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? Where have you been?
Well, a lot. I've only been mostly on the East Coast of the United States and stuff, so there's all kinds of places. I mean, I love history, so I'd probably chase down a lot of historical areas. I'd get the whole Indiana Jones hat and the leather jacket and the whip and stuff.
Sure.
I like to explore, so it'd be probably some areas off in Egypt or something, I don't know.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being with us today on Fresh Perspectives. Love hearing your perspective on the future of virtual reality. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you again.